Solving quadratics by factoring in the zero product property. To solve a quadratic means that we are finding the values of x that make the equation equal to 0. So when you're looking at the same quadratic format, ax squared equals plus bx plus c, we are now setting it equal to 0. Since a, b, and c are all numbers, we're looking at what value of x is then going to make the value of this equation equal to 0. So the first step is to go ahead and try to factor. And there's a few different ways, and what we're looking at now, we're going to start by factoring. So we're looking at x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. So we just want to look here at this, just the quadratic part. So we are looking at how can we factor just that part. So we're asking ourselves again, what two numbers add to be 7, multiply to be 10? So add to be 7, multiply to be 10. So hopefully you're saying, well, that's going to be x plus 2, x plus 5. So if we have x plus 2, x plus 5 equals 0, then we're looking for, we can then go on to the next step about finding the zeros. And this is where the zero product property comes into play. What you want to remember is that anything times 0 equals 0. So if either one of these factors is equal to 0, then 0 times x plus 5 is going to equal 0, or x plus 2 times 0 is going to equal 0. So the zero product property says that one of these at least has to be 0. And so that's what we do then. We say, okay, if one of them has to be 0, then that's what we're going to do. And we're going to set x plus 2 equal to 0, and we're going to set x plus 5 equal to 0, because if that's what we want, then that's what we do. And so then by just solving for x through our equations, we end up with that this equation will equal 0 if x is negative 2 or x is 5. And we can always substitute that in by saying, okay, if I take negative 2 squared plus 7 times negative 2 plus 10 equals 0, and substitute out, negative 2 squared is 4, 7 times negative 2 is negative 14, 4 plus negative 14 is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. 0 equals 0. We can do the same thing with 5. 5 squared is 25. Then we have negative 5 times 7 is minus 35. Plus 10, well, 25 minus 35 is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. So it all works out. So what we are going to say then is the solution is when x is negative 2 or x is negative 5. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to start with the factoring. So we've got we're looking for what adds to be 2 and multiplies to be negative 8. So we have a negative here, so the signs have to be different. So if we're going to multiply to be negative 8 but add to be 2, then we've got to have a positive 4 and a negative 2. So it's going to be x minus 2 and x plus 4. So there's our factoring. So then again, we come down and we say, okay, well, x minus 2 needs to equal 0, and x plus 4 needs to equal 0. So x equals 2, and x equals negative 4. So again, if we substitute it in, we start here. 2 squared is 4. plus 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, minus 8 is 0. Negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16, and then times 2 would be negative 8, so 16 minus 8 is again 0. So our solutions are x equals 2, x equals negative 4. So this one's a little bit different. On this one, the first thing that we have to do is get it equal to 0. We have to get that negative 1 over onto this side. So to do that, we add 1 to both sides. Because if we do it to one side it equals, we have to do it to the other side. So we've got x squared plus 2x plus 1 now equals 0. So once we get that equal to 0, now we can go and we can factor and say, okay, well, this has to be x plus 1, x plus 1. So then we have x equals negative 1, and we don't have to write it twice because if these are the same factors, then you only have that 1, 0. So on the next slide, I want you to copy down the problem, and I want you to pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so here's hopefully what you ended up with. First we factor x minus 6 and x minus 6, because to add to be negative 12 and multiply to be positive 36, they both have to be negative 6. Then because we have minus 6, we end up with x equals 6, because we're setting each of these equal to 0, add 6 to either side. So because they're the same, x equals positive 6. Same thing. Alright, so again, take the second to write this down and then pause the video. Work it out, see what you can come up with. When you've got it worked out, restart the video for the answer. Alright, so take a look. First thing we had to do was subtract 21 from both sides. Once we subtracted 21, we had the equation equal to 0. Then we could go ahead and factor. We needed to add to be 4, but multiply to be negative 21. So we had 7 and 3. The 7 had to be positive because we had to have a plus 4 there in the middle. So then we take and separate the factors. X plus 7 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. Subtract 7 from both sides, x equals negative 7, and then add 3 to both sides, so x equals 3. So you'll see more in class.